Well, hello, everybody. This is Jonathan Weedman with Community Conversations presented by the Outlook newspaper group. Thank you for joining us today. And I am so pleased to have with us a dear friend, a real treasure of Los Angeles, an extraordinary community leader who helms perhaps one of the most beloved nonprofit organization in town, Project Angel Food, their chief executive officer, Richard Ayoub. Richard, it's great to be with you today. And thank you much for joining the community conversation.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning.
So good to see you.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Every day that I wake up without COVID, I feel grateful and I feel healthy, and especially because we are serving a population of immune suppressed people, and we all need to stay healthy. So we have never slowed down. We have never shut down our doors. At Project Angel Food, we're serving 2,500 people a day. So I take the job very seriously, and I take my health very seriously as well.
No, it's very important, to say the least. And what we're all dealing with right now regarding COVID is extraordinary. We're in the middle of a surge, and it is touching every aspect of our lives. And you know, one of the things that Project Angel Food has done, and for those who don't know what Project Angel Food is, they feed, as Richard said, 2,500 people a day. That is practically 1 million people annually who you feed, vulnerable populations.
It's 1 million meals.
It's 1 million meals, rather. Sorry, it's 1 million meals a day. And Richard has been with the agency since 2016, but I'd like to go back in time a little bit and start at the beginning, if I may. Richard, I know you're born in El Paso, Texas.
Yes.
That's a long ways from Southern California. But tell me a little bit about where you grew up and where you went to school, and what led you on this path to working in community and philanthropy and social justice and taking care of folks. How did Richard get to where he is this morning?
Well, you know, I grew up in El Paso. I have a Mexican-American mother and a Lebanese father. And, you know, I grew up with a lot of love and warmth from the Latino side. My father was very stoic, but also he showed his love through money. And so I remember one time when I came home for Christmas, and I was in between jobs. I don't know how my father knew, but he found out. And he pulled me aside and said, "Ricky," that's what they called me, "Ricky, go into my closet and see if that jacket fits you." And as I walked by, he said, "There's something in the pocket for you." And there was $1,000 in the pocket. It was his way of saying, "I know what you're going through. Here's a very quiet gesture. No, none of the family members know." And, you know, I often talk about my mother, and my mother being the warmth and, you know, fueling my charitable side. But my father did it in his own quiet way. So I do want to tell you one story about growing up in El Paso, which, you know, is right on the border with Ciudad Juarez, Mexico.
Right.
And so I've always felt very blessed that just because I grew up on this side of the dry Rio Grande River, my life was exponentially better than people who grew up on the other side. So one day when I was 10 years old, I went to my mother and I said, "Mom, I need a new pair of sneakers." I didn't need a new pair of sneakers, but everyone else in class was getting new sneakers. So my mother said, "Okay, get in the car." We got in the car and we passed the Popular, which was my favorite department store. It was like a Macy's in El Paso. And we kept on going and we went into Juarez. And I said, okay. Then we passed the big shopping center in Juarez, and we kept on going. Then we went into the garbage dump. And then we went deeper into the dump. And then we went into a place where people actually built their homes out of cardboard and lived at the dump.
Jesus. Wow.
it was her way of saying, these people have nothing, and yet you have everything, and you want more. And my mother said to me later, because I don't remember saying this, she goes, but Mom, how can I help all these people? And so here we are a few decades later, and my goal is to help all these people. So it's always been inside me that I felt I needed to be a part of my community. And I got into television news because I thought that would be a way to make a difference in my small part of the world. I started in El Paso. I worked at my favorite TV station. It was amazing at the age of 21 to reach your goal in life.
Wow.
So when that happens, you have to actually start dreaming bigger. And so I eventually ended up in LA producing TV news. And through this journey, I kept asking myself, should I stop this and do something that makes the world a better place? I never knew what that would be. And then one day in 2015, I got a phone call. You know, people say they got a calling. I got a call. And it was from my dear friend, Bobby Ralston, who was on the board of Project Angel Food. And he and I also started a very small nonprofit where we adopted an elementary school in Hollywood, a very rough area in Hollywood where the kids, you know, were kind of underserved. And we started taking 40 and then 50 kids to Disneyland every year. And then we did different events every 3 months at the school. Now the grades are up, now attendance is up, now the parents are more involved because this group of non-parents came in and showed your kids do have value. So Bobby and I started that in, 21 years ago, in 2000, 2001. And so he called me up one day and he said, I was in Brazil and I had this epiphany. We're changing the leadership of Project Angel Food. Would you by any chance be interested in being interim executive director? Now, if you're asking yourself your whole life, should I give this up and do something that makes the world a better place? And you literally get a phone call that gives you that opportunity. There is no other answer but yes.
First God whispers, then God shouts. And it sounds like you heard God the first time and got the message. That's a wonderful story. I didn't know that story. And I certainly agree with you. I think that if you want to do something good for yourself, do something good for somebody else, and you'll feel it in your gut. I must tell you that among the nonprofit executive directors and leaders that I've worked with throughout my career, you are in a class by yourself, because not only are you a great fundraiser and a great leader, but you're visionary. And what you've accomplished since you've been at Project Angel Food is really extraordinary. And how you've managed during, some of the worst economic times, the most challenging times, certainly with COVID over the last near almost 2 years now, to have not only sustained but grown the organization's footprint in terms of the number of people who need help at a time when it's perhaps never been more urgent, I would say, over the last couple of years. So let me ask you this more broadly, Richard, because you have a national profile. And I know you work with many people throughout the country around this issue. But what do you feel right now are the urgent issues facing our country? I personally feel that our community is at a crossroads. Our nation is at a crossroads that I've never experienced in my lifetime. And so would you comment a little bit about that? And, are you optimistic? Are you worried? Do we have more tough days ahead? How are you feeling about the way things are right now?
Well, I think the one thing that affects us all is COVID. If we don't have our health, we don't have anything. And so that is something at the forefront of my thoughts every day. And that is causing depression, isolation for people. I've been very blessed, as you said earlier, that if you have a sense of purpose, and if you go out of yourself and you do something for others at a time when you can feel sorry for yourself or for the world or for what's going on, it helps you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And so during this entire time, since March 2020, which is almost 2 years now, I have gone out of myself and have pushed through the fear. We all have fear. And it's not unlike the early days of AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
How can you get it? Can you get it by touching the counter? Do you have to spray your groceries? Remember all of that stuff. It was just less than 2 years ago, but we were doing all of these things. And so every day, the whole idea is just to keep moving. Just keep moving, keep your heart moving, keep your body moving, keep your thoughts moving, keep it going, because you can get isolated and you can get sad and you can get alone. And, you know, what I do is very powerful for me because I'm helping these people. But what I would like every single person watching this podcast or listening to it to do is to adopt one person. Adopt one person you know who's in your neighborhood who never leaves their home. Someone, you know, I have a friend who is 76 years old. She has a hard time walking. Every once in a while, I will call her up and say, Lynn, I'm going to pick you up and we're going to have lunch. It takes longer to get her into the car. It takes longer to get her out of the car. And then we sit there and we have a wonderful lunch. But it gives her a reason to put on the makeup and to feel good and to get dressed up. If you can do that for a neighbor, and we all have a neighbor that we know needs a little love, even if you just drop, you know, a little gift at their door, just let them know someone is thinking of them.
It's a beautiful thing. I may know who you're talking about, and if it is who I think it is, she's a very special woman.
You do know her, yes.
I think I know very well. Bless you for that, and give her my love. We chat on Facebook. Well, you know, and she's what a character too. Well, let me thank you, Richard. Let me pivot for a minute, and let me just ask you a question. What is your average day like? What's a day like for Richard Ayoub?
You know, the great thing about this job is there's no average day. Today, I got up at 7:15, did a Peloton class, had breakfast, and now talking to you. Then I have a series of Zoom meetings, and I'm going to have dinner with a board candidate. Yesterday, I had a meeting first thing in the morning with our capital campaign consultants. And then later on, we had a finance committee meeting. And so there's a lot of, what's so great about this job is it's very similar to producing, is that you juggle a lot of constituents. So you're 1 minute you're talking to a donor. In fact, I had a donor who called me up yesterday in tears to tell me that her husband had passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And he was buried on my birthday. And yet she had sent me a birthday card. I said, Jackie, you sent me a birthday card and your husband had just died. She goes, I actually wrote it out while he was still alive. And he knew I was sending it to you. And we love you. And I just didn't want to bother you with the holidays. And, you know, you get a call like that. Then you're talking to your board members who are different constituents. Then you're talking to your staff who, you know, we're getting them tested twice a week now on site. We went in and got them tested. People are saying, thank you, Richard, for bringing this to us. And then you're talking to the clients. Sometimes the client will call me up and say, I didn't get my meal. And it's because I deliver meals to clients every once in a while.
That's right.
And they'll keep my phone number and then they'll call me. And I'm like, okay, Ezra, we'll get that meal to you. And then there's also, so it's the donors, the staff, oh, and then there's the volunteers, the people who deliver the meals for us and the people who work in the kitchen. So I have 5 different constituents and I have to switch from one to another constantly.
Talk about an enterprise. It's extraordinary. Well, let me ask you another question as a leader in the nonprofit sector. You know, during the last 20 years, philanthropy in Los Angeles has really evolved, changed, and continues to do so. We've seen the exodus of a lot of corporations, a lot of changes around fundraising, what foci are, and things like that. I know that my alma mater, Wells Fargo, has completely upended their funding program from when I was there. What advice or direction or guidance or encouragement would you provide, or could you provide to nonprofit leaders working in the sector today? Many organizations, as a result of COVID, many other factors, are struggling to survive, to meet their payroll and to meet the needs of the constituencies they serve. What would you say to them right now? Because it has been a challenging time, and it's not just restaurants and small businesses and industries that have suffered because of COVID, but a lot of our nonprofit partners have had to reduce their services, and some have had to shut down.
Right. And
what would you say to those?
I feel for them. What I would say is diversify your portfolio. There was a time when Project Angel Food was events. Maybe 50% of our revenue came from events. We have, over the years, brought that down to about 30%, so that we could get the individual donors up, the foundations up, government funding up. These different buckets that you have, if you can diversify so that if the economy goes bad, it doesn't completely shut you down. If you get COVID and you can't have any events, that you're not completely shut down. So that's one thing, diversify. The second thing is don't be afraid. Go in and go in strong. Very early on in my development, when I was 19 years old, I started this nonprofit to raise money in El Paso for an Olympic level gymnast who didn't have enough money to go to the Olympics. And I remember I went to the #1 radio station because this gymnast, her name was Pam Lee, not the Baywatch Pam Lee, but the West Texas Tornado.
West Texas Tornado Pam Lee.
Yeah, I wish I knew where she was today. But Pam Lee, she needed a trampoline. Her mother called me and said, Pam needs a trampoline. I go, how much is a trampoline? She goes, $800. Now, at that time, $800 was a lot of money. So I had an old-fashioned Rolodex. I got a recipe box and I put names of every business owner and their phone number, and I started calling. The very first one I called was the gentleman who owned the radio station KHA, the #1 radio station in El Paso. And he took a meeting with this 19-year-old kid. Wow. My mother always said, don't talk on the phone, get them in person. It's harder to say no in person.
Exactly.
Now, I think we have to revise it and say, don't email them, get them on the phone. It's harder to say no on the phone than by email. But so I got a meeting with him and I explained what I was doing and that I needed $800 to get this trampoline. I went in knowing the universe is going to conspire to make this happen. He gave me a check for $800.
Wow.
That taught me a lesson. Set your goal, go for it, believe you're going to get that goal, and you will. And so for this, how it affects me today is I knew at the beginning of this pandemic that people would be thinking of Meals on Wheels and food banks. But would they think of Project Angel Food?
Right.
We would get lost in all of that. And I went against advice from a lot of people. They said, people are hurting, don't ask for money. And I said, we need to ask for money. We need to make sure people know we're out here and we're doing good work and we need them. And so what I did is one night I wrote this letter. The next morning I said, let's make thousands of Xerox copies of this letter. Let's get volunteers to stuff the envelopes like Lynn. Let's put the stamps on them. Let's put the labels on them. We sent out, I think, 17,000 letters. It's the most successful direct mail campaign we've ever had.
Wow.
Because it was an urgent plea from me. You saw urgent on the outside. You saw the labels all skewed. You knew that Project Angel Food needed help. I think we raised something like $700,000 or $800,000 on that.
Wow.
With that letter, which is unbelievable. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need. And don't be afraid to do it as early as you need to. And don't be afraid to set your goal and go for it until you reach it. Of course, you don't want to be tone deaf. You know, if something is happening in the universe and it doesn't make sense, you have to respond to that. But if you're providing food at a time when people can't get food, and people who need food are confined to their homes, and they are the people who are most prone to die with COVID, people who have heart disease, lung disease, and diabetes, then you need to go out and tell people what you're doing.
It's the most compelling work, and congratulations on that campaign. That is actually a stunning story. Let me pivot for a second and ask you about something else, Richard. I love to ask folks about leadership. I always like to say I've had some great bosses in my career. I have some bosses who probably ought to be in jail. I won't name who they are yet.
Yeah, okay.
and so how would you describe your leadership style, and what, in your estimation, your appraisal, your experience, makes a great leader? And then lastly, and we can come back to this, I'd love to know who are some of the people who've had a profound influence in your life, whether they're historic figures, whether they're contemporary, whether they are fictional. So what makes a great leader? How do you lead? And who are the people who influenced you?
So the way I lead is with love, quite frankly. I start from a place of love. I am a consensus builder. I collaborate. I don't micromanage. I have no interest in that. Mm-hmm. You know, I was a TV producer for many, many years. And I have written so much through the years, and I get, direct mail. I get all this stuff that I need to look at. And I could, for my own ego, rewrite everything. I have no interest in that. Mm. A while back, I released it and said, okay, everyone doesn't write like me, and I don't write like everyone. But just because we write differently doesn't mean they're wrong and I'm right. And in Hollywood, because you're the guy in charge, you're right. I have worked for so many people who have rewritten things just for the sake of rewriting them, just to stroke their own ego. It never really made it better. So I don't need to do that, even though that is a big skill set of mine. What I do is if it doesn't reflect my essence, then I'll change it. For instance, there's a direct mail piece that's going out in February, and it used the word individuals who are suffering from illness. So there were two words that I don't use. I don't call people individuals, so I changed it to people. And I don't say our clients are suffering, I say they're living with. So I changed those two words in the entire piece because I want it to reflect more me.
But
So, what's
the
that?
person, the person who then wrote that, though, I mean, understands that, but you give people the space and the bandwidth to do their best, but when they need encouragement and some guidance, you step in.
Absolutely. If you're writing for me, that's my voice. And I actually am very blessed to have Brad Vesey on he's our communications director. He writes my voice better than I do. I'm like, wow, that was really a good letter I wrote.
So who are some of the people who have influenced you, who you look up to, who have inspired you in your life?
Well, someone who we all know, who's very close, is John Giles. John Giles was the former CEO at Project Angel Food for 16 years. And when I was hired, the best thing they did was hire him as a fundraising consultant. And so without knowing it, he was like a CEO coach for me. It was really amazing. We were working every single day, making phone calls, strategizing, talking to donors. He really helped me get to a point where I felt confident doing this work. Because I was a TV producer who became a nonprofit leader. Yes, I had some natural skills, but there were some things that I needed to learn. And John was very generous with time and talent and continues to be a really dear friend. And I would tell you people like Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King, they inspire me. And it's all about the underdog, taking care of the underdog. And that's always been my mission in life, is whether it's a poor person, an old person, an extremely young person, making sure that the forgotten are remembered. And they inspire me.
I think the greatest gift you can give yourself is a gift of giving to others. And I'll certainly echo what you said about John. I was very proud to have served on the board of Project Angel Food. Oh my God, back in 1995. And John was our relatively new executive director. I learned a lot from John. And I remember when he successfully launched and completed the build out of Project Angel Food's kitchen on Sunset Boulevard. And of course, and then led the effort to buy the building on Vine Street. An exceptional guy. So, we're heading down the path. Of course, I would like to just talk all morning long. And, and this will be the first, I hope, of many conversations, Richard. But let me ask you one more question, another question. Having run a nonprofit organization, having run a corporate foundation, I know that your job becomes your life. And the intersections between your personal life and your business life are often blurred. I think it's for a lot of people these days. And particularly with technology, your cell phone and the computer, you're never away from work. But how does Richard recreate? What do you do for fun? How do you recharge your batteries? And you grew up in El Paso, now you're in Los Angeles. What do you love about our city? And what do you do for fun?
So I love LA because LA allows you to be you. My sister told me years ago, she said, I wasn't sure whether you were gay or not, But if you were, I knew LA would bring it out in you. And my first year in LA, I went to a gay pride parade on Santa Monica Boulevard. And I went alone. And there was a float that went by and they sang, "We Are Family." And I found myself clapping.
Uh-huh.
I looked around and guys around me were clapping too. It was the first time I had really felt I belonged.
Mm,
LA does that for people.
I love it.
It really tells you no matter who you are, where you are, you will find where you belong.
Truly,
And I love that about it.
truly.
I love to take a spin class and
Uh-huh.
have amazing music. I have a friend who teaches spin, Daryl Gaines, who says the music is the ride. And it is.
Uh-huh.
It's the music drives you. So I love that. I like to go hiking. I
Mhm.
love dinner parties with friends where you're sitting around having a delicious meal, having some wine, and you're just connecting on a beautiful level. And, you know, it forces you to invest 2 hours in someone.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore. We always, let's have coffee. Let's go for a drink. You have dinner. It's a bigger commitment.
Indeed, it's an experience.
And I love Broadway, and I love to travel. All of that's been put on hold for now.
For now. Well, I love it. We share all the same loves of our city and what to do. So as we wrap up, let me just ask you, is there anything else, Richard, you'd like to say or offer to the folks who are listening to this, at this time in our world?
What I would like to tell people is if we watch too much CNN, MSNBC, or even Fox, we will see the darkness in the world. And this comes from someone who used to work in TV news, who has 2 Emmys for television news.
Congratulations. That's
I didn't mean to brag, but
now I'm going to brag on you. That's awesome.
So, what you need to realize is at a place like Project Angel Food, and there are a lot of pockets like us in this city, there is light and beauty. I call it a sanctuary of goodness. 922 Vine Street, people who are there, whether they volunteer, whether they work there on staff, they're there because they want to make a difference.
Mm.
They don't have to go to work. Brad Bessie doesn't have to work there. Bill McDermott doesn't have to work there. Mark McBride, Mindy Glazer, Carrie Hannawell, Don McCauley does not have to work there for 30 years in a row. But we all show up because we want to help our community and we want to make a difference.
Well, those are beautiful thoughts, Richard, and thank you. Inspiring and moving. And gosh, what a great way to start the day. I think I need to talk to you every morning before I go.
I'm here.
I'm going to dial you up now from now on. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to this being the first of many conversations together, and hearing about your great work and continued success, and best love to you and your amazing team. And thank you so much for being part of the community conversation.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.